Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Just for some people who might not know who you are, Jasmine is a fantastic emerging artist with millions of streams across Spotify and other streaming platforms as well. And you've had multiple plays on BBC Introducing, and you've recently just released your latest EP, Love Worth Believing. So we'll just kind of get straight into it, just so other people know who you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into music, how you got into songwriting and things like that?
Sure. I spent most of my childhood training as a dancer, which I love. I did loads of classes in ballet and modern and contemporary, and that was kind of the path that I wanted to go down. And after quite a long time of doing it and things changing, my love for it kind of turned more into a love for music. And I had always kind of done piano lessons here and there and singing lessons, but it was more of like a side rather than a main thing. Yeah, it kind of just flipped. And I was like, actually, this is what I want to do. I kind of took it a bit more seriously. I changed and I went to a music college that was amazing. And yeah, I haven't really looked back since.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And which music college was it that you went to?
I went to East London Arts and Music.
Oh, fab, okay. And is
Yeah.
that sort of where you started to develop your songwriting, or had you been songwriting from when you were a little bit younger as well?
I'd written songs. Yeah, I used to write songs when I was younger. I don't know how good they were though. I was about 12. But yeah, I remember my first album that I bought was Duffy, Warwick Avenue. I just remember loving it and listening to it over and over again on my birthday. And I was just obsessed with like the lyrics and the melody and the way it made me feel. I can't even remember what you asked me now. Just random.
No, you know what, that's sort of beautifully tied into the next thing, because I was actually going to say you've got quite obviously a soulful sound in your music as well. And I was going to ask you what your music inspirations are. So do you think that's come from Duffy, or have you had other inspirations as well that have come through?
So I grew up. When I was younger, we used to go and see my grandparents by the sea, and we had this big iPod with loads of tunes on it that my mum and dad had just put on there. And there were loads of people, but we listened a lot to Tracy Chapman, Dido, Nora Jones. That kind of I remember being in the car and listening to those. It felt very guitar driven, and very like strong melody. There were very strong melodies, and I don't know, I feel like that's played a big part because I always feel like I want my music to be sad and moving, but I always want it to feel like it's moving forward. So I started doing sessions when I was 17, and one of my first sessions that I'd done was with Chorus, who's now a really good friend. And I remember our first session, and he played me an artist called James Fauntleroy, who's more of a writer. And it was so amazing for me to hear. It was a really strong guitar with an amazing R&B melody over it, and I'd never really heard anything like that before until he played it to me. And that to me was a bit of a turning point in kind of hearing a lot of influences that I love and someone was doing it a little bit. And I felt so inspired after that that I was kind of like, okay, how do I incorporate this into my own music?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's interesting that you talk about the guitar and how that influenced, because I noticed obviously when I started listening to your music, you've got like quite a strong guitar line now, especially through your Love Worth Believing, throughout your music. And you have these like little hooks that sort of come to you, and then you keep them on repeat, and those are like the little things that people will grab and remember. How do you approach your songwriting process? Do you have these little hooks that come in, or do they develop out of the sessions like you were saying? And how does it all come about? How does it start?
I'm very much a kind of go with the flow, follow your heart kind of girl anyway. And sometimes I get little lines, or someone will say something and I'm like, oh, I want to take that for inspiration. But the majority of the time I go into the session and I just kind of want to feel it out. So there might be something on that day that the musician I'm working with plays, and that inspires or evokes a feeling in me, and then that's what I feel like the song should be. It feels very much like a room to room, case by case situation. I don't I can I've got a little note on my phone with ideas that if it comes to it and we're having a bit of a dry moment, I can bring it out. But I really like just feeling it because it feels much more of a collaborative thing to do.
Was Love Worth Believing, was it a collaborative process? Did you have other people come in and do songwriting with you and create sessions with you, or do sessions with you even?
So everyone that I play with, they're just the band. I mean,
Mhm.
not just the band, they're amazing, but I don't write with them. So all my songs, I mainly write with one of my best friends called Jez Ashurst, and I met him 5 years ago, and we had our first session. I loved it and the way he plays guitar. But the majority of my songs have been, yeah, they've all been written basically with him, and then I'll show it to the band, play it to the band, and then they kind of help me work it out for the show, which will obviously be a little bit of a different arrangement, or there'll be things that are in the record that aren't, we're not playing live. But yeah, they're two separate things basically.
Amazing. Because you mentioned on your Instagram, when I was scrolling through, your song Her, it was inspired by bumping into an ex and things like that. And is that how you think, is that how you approach your songwriting? Is it all inspired by personal experiences, or do you now take inspiration from lots of different things regardless?
It's predominantly my life experience. Sometimes I dramatize it a little bit because I think you have to. But yeah, it all has to be kind of my personal story. I feel like that way I can be closer to the song in the writing process, and I can kind of be a better judge of whether or not it resonates with me. There have been a few times though that like one of my mates has said something, I'm like, that's a great line, I really want to take that. And I've done that, but I've still made it my own. But yeah, it's all basically me and what's going on and how I'm feeling.
It's very cathartic, isn't it, as well, to do that and just put it out into the world and let it go.
And also when I'm in the room, like whenever I write with Jez, it's like a therapy session. It's crazy. You can go in thinking, oh, I'm feeling all right, or I've got this a little bit on my mind. And I'll come out of the session having written a song. And I'm like, oh, actually, that's how I was feeling. And it's been expressed in a much more eloquent way.
So you've kind of given us a little bit of a backstory of what your musical journey originally looked like. You said you started as a dancer, and then you sort of transitioned into being more into the music industry, a songwriter, and went to college and whatnot. But from then, how did you grow your following? So did you go to open mic nights? Did you play in sessions, or like how did you build this following that you have now?
Well, it's still growing.
Yeah.
But it's been a bit of a variation of releasing new music, show meeting people at shows, doing as many shows as I can, whether that's supports or I haven't really done a huge amount of open mics. So before I released my first EP in 2019, I had a residency at the Bedford in Balham in the pub, and that was really fun. I was there for just over a month, and that was good. It was kind of I'd never really done any gigs before. I'd done dance shows, which is very different, and I'd done a lot of sessions, and that was kind of like my not comfort zone, but I was much more comfortable in that environment. And so doing those shows at the Bedford was kind of an experience where I got to see what gigging was like, really. So yeah, started off like that. And also, I guess social media is a big one. I think it's a big one now, and kind of yeah, TikTok, Instagram, people hearing you. I think for me that's what I'm trying to do more so at the moment, is just kind of push myself to do something every day on social media, so it's like more and more people can hear me.
So basically, because you do a lot of video content, as a lot of it is inspired by obviously your songs, and they're kind of continuing the story of what your song is about and things like that. I'm just wondering if there's a bit more of a strategy that you have there, or do you try to just keep it as authentic as possible, as if it was your personal account that you were just sharing with your fans, and then you just see what happens and what resonates with people?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try and be as authentic as possible. For me, it's I'm still finding my social media voice. I think I'm still on the journey of like, okay, should I post this much? Should I say that? It feels all the music is as close to my heart as it can be. And so with something like social media, where you want people to hear it and you want people to be engaged in your journey and kind of follow you and be with you along for the ride, it's tricky to know how to communicate and what to give and what not to give. And it's interesting as well when you're trying to sell something that you love so much. I'm not trying to sell it, but that is you want more people to hear it, you want people to love it, and in order to do that you have to find a way. But Yeah,
I
it's
know.
an interesting one. Is it trying to commodify art? Is like, how do you do that?
Yes.
Still feeling as personal as possible.
You had a track that was featured on Radio 1, which was the title of your EP, wasn't it? Love Worth Believing. How did you feel when that happened? And like, tell me a little bit about that and when you found that out.
I was so gassed with that. I was so happy. Jess Izzat, who made Love Worth Believing track of the week, she's just an angel. She supported me so much, and I feel like we've got such as an independent artist in London. I feel like Jess Izzat is just such a champion of new music. It feels so lovely to have such a strong and amazing energy kind of in that radio position, because it's, doesn't happen all the time, and when it does, it's very special. And that's definitely how I felt when I found out about that. It's like you kind of broken through for a second, and yeah, I mean, also the amount of messages and like love I got from people, like on their drive home or whatever, having heard my song and being like, I'm now a listener and I love it. It was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And I guess that's another way of people hearing about me and finding out about me. So it makes such a difference, honestly.
That's really good. I'm so glad. Well, that's because a part of the ISM is to support, like, we want to basically try and find these channels and ways that help musicians to, like you said, get their music out there because it's such a difficult world.
It is.
And so we obviously want to promote channels that are super useful to musicians. And sometimes I think, especially with BBC Introducing, because it's so big now, you kind of click the button and hope for the best. You don't know what's going to happen. And you wonder sometimes, like, how much, I think there is a little bit of navigating and talking to the right people and making sure that they know your name so that when they see you come up on the list, they're aware of you already. I think there's a little bit of that goes on, but it's just nice to hear that like independent musicians are getting their sound out there for sure.
Definitely, yeah. I did a night, so it was Summer by the River. It was a Radio 1 show that happened a few weeks ago, and Jess Izzat asked me to perform, and that was just such a lovely night. My brother came down, and there was a band called Common Goldfish that headlined, and it was just great. Like, even for me, I love music, and I love when I find a new artist early, for me, like as a fan of theirs, because it kind of just feels like you're like, I found them, and it's like personal, and I'm going to be along for their journey, and it's just, yeah, it's a really special thing, I think, having that support.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, I can't agree more. So is there anything in terms of an independent artist, what sort of challenges have you faced trying to find your space within the world? And is there anything that you think more work could be done on that you're passionate about? Yeah, just
um that's a good question. I feel like it's quite a lot, to be honest. There's quite a lot of challenges, especially doing it the independent route. I mean, I'm not complaining. I want this. So, you know. But yeah, I mean a few things really. Firstly, it's really hard to for me, I'm a bit of a sucker for comparison sometimes. It's really hard to, especially when you're having like a lull or a quiet moment, when you haven't got a show or you haven't got a song coming out. It's really easy to kind of be on social media and see other artists doing really well or like performing here and doing that. It's like, what's going on for me? I guess another one would be like finding your voice on social media and communicating that in an effective way that feels like people are really understanding who I am, and that's coming across. I guess as well, what's really important is finding the right team. It took me a hot sec to find the right team. And, if you like moving around sometimes, but yeah, I'm lucky. I found, I've got the best manager in the whole world. It took me a second to find him though. But yeah, that's also really important.
no, that's great. I mean, we hear quite frequently about some of the sharks that are out there
Yeah.
from members, and that's what we're sort of here for as well, is like making sure that they have a legal team to be able to speak to, so that if anything does look a little bit dodgy, then they can just ask the legal team for help. But sometimes they just don't know what is available to them. And yeah, it can be a bit of a scary world out there sometimes, especially doing it independently. And
Yeah, yeah.
even getting signed up I've had friends who have been signed up into a record label or a publishing deal, and they've wanted out of it because they've been trying to tailor them in a way that they don't want to do it anymore,
Yeah.
and then they couldn't get out of it and they were stuck in there for a year and a bit.
That's like my worst nightmare. That's why I've always been wanting to be an independent artist.
Mhm.
I mean that, and I'm probably a bit of a control freak when it comes to my songs and my music. I also just feel like the artists that I love have kind of as much control as possible. Like I would never want to be in a situation where I'm trapped in a deal or a contract or whatever that I can't get out of, or I'm kind of being what's the word? I don't know.
Sort of like funneled into a certain.
Funneled into kind of making a certain kind of sound that isn't me or whatever.
Mhm.
I think what does help about like finding a good team. I mean, a lot of so like my manager and my lawyer, who's also amazing, they were once, you know, musicians and artists and whatever, and so they've been on this side of things, and so then now when they're not doing that anymore and they've got a different role, they're coming from such a great place, and you know that they've got you because they've been on that side. I think that makes a massive difference.
That's fab. And how did you meet them? Is that just through networking, and they saw you perform, or?
It was kind of networking. So my lawyer Liv has kind of she's been looking after me really since I first signed my first deal, which was when I was about 17. And she helped me find managers, she helped me find labels. Um, in the very beginning though, when I first had my session with Chorus, we wrote a song, and at the time he was signed to a label and he had a manager, and I didn't have either of those things. And the people he was with heard me, loved it, and then I got signed. So it's kind of just been a bit of a right time, like right place, right people. Uh,
Yeah, and a bit of a domino effect of.
Kind of, yeah. And then if it didn't, that wasn't working for me, so I moved on and I was able to get out easily enough. So yeah.
That's fab. So kind of come to the like sort of the end of everything, but just last words really. Have you got anything exciting coming up that we should know about?
Oh yes, I feel like I have. So I've done a lot of writing this year, and I've got a big, I'm gonna say project, but it's an album.
Mhm.
I've got a big project coming on the way that
Amazing.
I'm so excited about. I feel like the songs are they're different in a good way. I feel like they're more me, and it's kind of yeah, they feel good. I feel like I'm stepping into the witchy world, which I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I love kind of all those mystical magical things, and I feel like they're now about to be expressed. So I'm excited for that. So yeah, those are a couple of things coming up.
Oh, well, that's amazing. Oh, well, honestly, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you and hearing like your journey and everything, and just kind of getting to know you a little bit more. And thank you so much for joining us and doing this with us. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you for asking me. It's such a pleasure, honestly, and it really meant a lot that you reached out to me after Latitude. Um,
Yeah.
that was my first show with a band.
Oh,
So, yeah,
really?
and it was lovely.
Oh, the way that they've done all the lighting around it was pretty incredible, actually.
You
Like
reckon?
when Courtney and I were watching it, Courtney's my colleague, we were like, this really suits her vibe, because it's quite a small show, and I think you were on at a bit of a bizarre time, weren't you? With
I was. There weren't many people watching, but I valued the people that were.
yeah, yeah, but I think it was because this is the whole issue with festivals, isn't it? Then when they've got one act and somewhere else, everyone just filters and they forget about all the acts that are happening everywhere
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
So, but we thought it was amazing, and then we looked at each other. We were like, we need to get in touch with her. Yeah, so it was great. We really loved every moment of it. So, no, thank you so much for doing this with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming to that set, and thank you for having me today. It's been so lovely to meet you.